Okay, welcome back. I'm Patrick Loke and this is John Bigatton, and we're talking about cash flow Forex today. Now, John, I get a lot of questions with people who call in. They want to know, how am I going to get involved? You know, how much time is it going to take? What exactly am I doing? Am I sitting staring at a computer for 10 hours a day? Am I looking at news items? What am I actually going to be doing once I'm involved with Forex trading?
Well, Patrick, look, every individual is different. For example, myself, when I first got involved with Forex, I was like, the charts were my baby, and I spent 4, 5, 6 hours a day on the charts.
Okay.
All right, that was me. That was my personal choice. Yet there are others that I know that essentially get on the markets when just after London opens, which is in the evenings, and they may spend an hour and a half to 2 hours. Okay. Then there are other people that know specifically the time of the day that they want to trade Forex, and they'll allocate maybe just 1 hour, the same hour each day that the market is open, and that's all they do. All right. So it's entirely up to you. And the fact the market's open 24 hours, 5.5 days a week, you've got to decide when you want to be on there. Obviously, when the major exchanges are open, which is London, Europe, London, and New York, that is when the most activity takes place.
Okay, so for people who are living in Australia, say on the eastern seaboard, like most of us are, what are the typical times where there'd be more activity?
Look, starting in the current time zone with daylight saving now, well, you're here in Queensland, so look, you can look at it from say 6 o'clock, even 5 o'clock. All right, from there onwards, anywhere between say 5 o'clock through to 10 or 11. There's plenty of movement. There's pips to be gained. And for those that don't manage their risk, there's pips to be donated back. So. Yeah, look, and you've got to be aware of specific fundamental news as well, or economic news that does come out that can essentially affect specific currencies. And we show you all that, and how some news can then affect other news items that will be coming out further on. So the result of one particular news will have an effect on something else. All right, and we teach all that, so people are aware of it, and they'll have up on their screen, okay, today, for example, non-farm payrolls coming out. And that's the big one. We'll talk about that in the education.
Okay. So people can be involved from as little as an hour a day, or they could be involved for several hours in the evening, and it's really personal choice. Now, as far as people that are having to pay for things, I mean, are there additional things? Do you have to pay for brokers? Do you have to pay for news and other things like that?
Good question. As far as news items, no, you don't have to pay for that. Essentially, there's a couple of websites which will direct you to whereby the news is available to you right there and then. As far as brokers, again, there's a multitude of ways of doing things. Some brokers have what is known as the spread, okay, which is predominantly just the spread, and it could be 1 pip, could be 2 pips, could be 5 pips, depending on the currency pair, and that's essentially what you would pay, the spread. Okay, then there's other platforms which I will discuss in more detail in the education program, but they're known as either pro accounts or ECN accounts. In other words, there you pay a small commission and the spread is a lot tighter. Okay, but essentially when you look at the whole concept of thing, the amount of so-called brokerage is fairly similar in both cases. It's just the way the platform operates that one may have a benefit over the other. Okay, that's essentially it.
And these platforms, do they cost money?
No.
Okay, so the brokers pretty much just provide them for you, and they make their money when you trade.
Exactly. Okay, that's exactly right.
Okay, so look, when we're involved in trading, what are we really looking for? We're looking at the charts that goes up, it goes down. When it goes up, do you buy more? What are you looking for?
Well, you'd like to identify the underlying trend, okay? Because with Forex, it doesn't matter whether the market's going up or whether it's going down or so. You can generate cash flow regardless of direction. So as a trader, as a Forex trader, you need to you need to identify the underlying trend. Okay? And once you've identified the underlying trend, that is the direction that you generally trade.
Absolutely. So if you are looking for confirmation of the trend by drawing lines on and so forth, you learn that through the education. And then there are other things that you use. So you're just not looking at just lines, you're looking at other things, and there's things called indicators and so forth which back up. So you just kind of stack the odds in your favour,
That's exactly the case. when you get to a certain level of forex trading, like for example, I purely base my decisions on price action.
Right.
All right, and then I'll use a metaphor. When you go to a physician and they assess you,
yeah.
all right, more often than not, they'll come up with some sort of a diagnosis. Now, to back their diagnosis, they'll get you to take a scan, whether it be an X-ray, an MRI, or a CT scan, whatever it may be,
sure.
to confirm essentially what they found, right?
Yeah.
With Forex, I use, for example, price action to determine what the underlying trending is and identify where historical levels of support and resistance would be. Okay. Then I may use, for example, certain moving averages to confirm what I've just found.
Yeah.
So I'm now stacking the odds in my favor.
Yeah.
Then I'll add some other indicators to increase the probability of this particular trade going in the direction that I'm anticipating.
I see.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course.
Fabulous.
Makes sense. So yeah, stacking the odds in our favour. This is the way that we trade and make money on any markets, and particularly with the foreign exchange market, as we discovered last session, it's actually one of those markets where we can really tightly control our risk as long as we follow certain guidelines and rules, which you learn in the Forex cash flow education.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, John. Thanks again, and we'll be back for our next little video.
Thank you.
Okay.